If you take the name ECAS, it stands for European Citizen Action Service.
ECAS is about ensuring citizens' rights and giving citizens the mechanisms to enable them to own those rights and see them in action.
The vision of ECAS is to see a citizen-centric participation in the European decision process. It's about citizens playing an active role and having a better understanding of the European Union and of means by which the European decision makers can take into consideration the valid views and requirements of citizens.
The way I have always seen it is that ECAS is the voice of the European citizen. And the role of the organization is to bring citizenship issues in Europe onto the agenda of stakeholders and decision makers. There are so many great ambitions, and Europe is for the people. Europe is for the citizen. This is what you hear on Sunday, and on Monday what the citizens get is a lot of red tape and a lot of no's and a lot of complexity. And ECAS has always been working to make Europe easy for citizens to participate, to make their voices heard, and to have a stake. And that's what I would call the main purpose.
The idea of an empowered citizenship that understands that it has rights, that wants a voice, that wants to be heard. And therefore, I think part of the work that we're doing as ECAS is about how we reinforce citizens' ability to be heard and their understanding of what democracy is.
The Maastricht Treaty came into force in 1992. ECAS was formed in the process leading up to the finalisation of that treaty. And that treaty, for the first time, stopped treating what we now know as citizens as being subjects of the member state. They became citizens in their own right. The driving force behind ECAS was about ensuring that just giving the people the title of citizen is one thing, but to give them the sense of being citizens is quite another thing. And in giving them sense, you also have to give them power and access to information in order that they can play the real role that in a democratic process that citizens should be able to play, and which was envisaged at the time of the Maastricht Treaty.
I'm really in love with the mission of ECAS, to empower citizens to exercise their rights.
If I think back to the ECAS that I contacted back in 1999 and the ECAS with which I'm engaged now, I wouldn't say that it's not so much a change, it's additions. That fundamental work of still being there for citizens, still providing that advice, the answers to their questions, that some of those which have really significant impacts on people's lives, is still there. It's still, the backbone, I think, of what ECAS does. But there are so many other things that we now do, partly because the concept of citizenship of the European Union has grown, and ECAS has been very much engaged in that.
When I took over ECAS as a director in 2014, the organization was working predominantly on EU rights, everything which is related to the concept of European citizenship. A bit more also on citizen participation, but at this point, in 2014, it seemed to me that freedom of movement is, and it hasn't been at this stage, very problematic. It became problematic immediately after that because of the refugee and the migration crisis, which had an impact on also internal EU mobility. People moving from one country to another for whatever reason started to experience more and more difficulties. And of course now with the COVID situation, we know what basically happened. Freedom of movement was totally dismantled overnight with barriers, and as we see, it's still not restored fully, and we don't know what exactly would happen. So now freedom of movement is an interesting subject to work on, very, very challenging, but in 2014 this wasn't the case. So therefore I thought, okay, it would be good if basically ECAS starts working on something which is a bit more forward-looking, maybe a bit more experimental, even risky. And this is how we have decided and set up an additional focus area to the one on EU rights, which was the digital democracy focus area. We wanted to explore the potential of technology in order to enhance democracy and to foster more meaningful participation of citizens in policy making in between elections.
So whether it's things like how do you engage your right to vote as an EU national living in another EU member state, and you have the right to vote in local elections, you have the right to vote in European elections, and to stand as a candidate. Not many people do. Why not? How can we get more people engaged to vote? How can people understand what the European Union is about? So what is it you're voting for? So we're now looking at citizenship, sort of education, as it were. We're also looking at how do you improve the quality of democracy within the European Union through citizens' engagement, whether that's the citizen initiatives that are there, but also the work that ECAS is now doing on e-democracy, that sort of digital engagement. All of those sorts of things have come, I suppose, partly with that development of citizenship. And ECAS has been about developing the concept and developing the tools. It's not just about the policy, it's about the how do we do this? How do we make it work?
I think the European Union has gone much larger and it has gone much more complex. In the future, there are actual real questions about the cohesion of the Union, about citizens living in peace, citizens living in prosperity. And I think the most important future challenge for ECAS is to keep Europe in the eyes of the citizens as something which is worth living and which is worth experiencing. If ECAS can continue to show the citizens how important Europe is, that is a tremendous contribution, because Europe lives and survives from the bottom up.
In order to be in touch with the reality of the everyday life of citizens, you need to be able to communicate with them on a daily basis. So we do that. For us it's very important, also because through this contact and through the services that we provide to citizens, we accumulate the knowledge and the evidence of what works and what doesn't work. And this is the basis for our strategies, intervention strategies for improvement.
I see that during these 30 years, ECAS has developed from a Brussels-centered organization to a Europe-centered organization, and this is very good.
Of all the years, the 30th anniversary of ECAS, we find citizens' rights have been peeled back as a result of the COVID emergency. And it's really quite ironic. At a time when we're looking at solving problems of citizens' participation, we're rolling back citizens' rights. So for ECAS, a very strong item in the short-term future is going to be in dealing with ensuring that those rights are returned and indeed reinforced.
All those challenges, we prefer to look at them as opportunities, because the challenges would not end and the crisis would not end. The fact that ECAS is professional enough and also agile and manages to adapt and to address the challenges, not only, but also to a bit foresee the future, is for me the recipe for success.
I think that the role of ECAS will only continue to get even more important than it already is. I think as EU citizens, it's so important that everyone is aware of their democratic rights, their ability to participate in democratic processes, to have their voice heard and to have that count. And I think that in that way, ECAS is uniquely equipped to help people understand, learn about, and realise those rights. So I think it's vitally important, and it's fantastic that such a service is out there to help each of us be able to do those things.
But I would like to congratulate ECAS to having reached this important milestone of 30 years. And I wish for them a very bright future ahead, where they continue doing this, and also particularly continue to invest in the digitalization of the services that they offer to everyone, and to keep investing in the network facility that they have, because I think this is quite unique in building this EU democracy and make sure that citizens really have a voice to be heard.
My birthday wish for ECAS is that they actually keep working for the European citizens, that they continue to be the voice of the European citizens here in Brussels, translating from the member states into the Brussels bubble.
So my wish is for us to be at the driving seat. And this is why it's so important to be forward-looking and to try to guess, somehow, hopefully an informed guess, of what the future will bring, so that we are there before it takes place and be prepared for it.